The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers or Rogers TV.
Welcome to Left and Right. One of the most unstable regions in the world is the Middle East. Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel all represent the most volatile flashpoints. In 1947, following World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution which partitioned this area into an Arab state and a Jewish state. What followed was the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, the 1967 Six-Day War, and today an ongoing conflict with missiles, bombs, death and devastation to all the peoples of this region. Sadly and ironically, this area is also characterized as the crossroads of religion, as a birthplace of Judaism and Christianity. In this program, we focus on a changing Palestine, a region in conflict. I'm Michael A. Charbon, and this is Left and Right. Welcome to Left and Right. My name is Michael A. Charbon, and today we're talking about Palestine and the evolving situation that's going on. Joining me here in studio today, to my right is Mr. Thomas Woodley. Mr. Woodley is president of Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. And to my left, Mr. Calvin Barry, former Crown prosecuting attorney and now a very successful prominent defense attorney with his own business in Toronto. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today.
Thank you.
In recent developments that have taken place in Palestine, we have, first of all, the Canadian government, who recently talked about removing some of their governmental representation. The UN passing a resolution identifying Palestine as a state. Some would say it means nothing. Others would say it means a lot. Others would also say that the Israelis, by building these new settlements, are starting to stick a stick, if you wish, into the conflict. I'll go to you first, Mr. Woodley. Tell me a little bit about what is your opinion? Where do you see things at in the development of Palestine, taking into consideration we had a ceasefire. Now the Israelis are building in an area that some would question as being valid. The UN resolution, there's a lot of things that are factoring into this very volatile area.
Well, I think if as Canadians, we quite often look at things from a human rights perspective, international law perspective. I think this is a very, very positive development. One thing I'd like to say right off the bat is the resolution that passed at the UN was not anti-Israel. In no way was it anti-Israel. It was simply a demonstration by the world community that their support for an independent Palestinian state. This was something that was, I think, first put on the plate in 1947 with the partition plan of the United Nations. An Israeli state was created in 1948. A Palestinian state was never created at that time, and it's the responsibility of the world community.
There was an Arab state. There was an Arab state established, and one of the points where the Israelis' position is that they're saying there's no way that Palestine could assert themselves as an independent country if they don't deal with the ceasefire and the negotiation with Israel. It's like putting the cart before the horse.
Well, that's their political position, fair enough, but it's not a legal position. Israel actually was admitted to the United Nations in, was it 1949 or 1950, again, without having settled things with their borders and peace and so on with their neighbors. So why should that requirement be imposed on the Palestinians? That's just their political argument. And I think actually the fact that the vote passed at the UN 138 to 9 demonstrates that there's massive support for this in the world.
Yeah, well, wait a second. 130. With all due respect, there was vetoes. There were people who abstained.
Abstentions. There's no veto with the General Assembly.
Sorry, but the point was it may have been such a majority with so many, but those who did not vote, I believe it was China, it was the United States, it was Great Britain. I mean, those are powers that make huge decisions. And so you can't necessarily say that it was unanimous, but many of those who did acknowledge it are not necessarily in a position of power.
Great Britain abstained, Australia abstained, China voted for, Russia voted for. It was the states that voted against were the United States, Israel, Canada, Panama, the Czech Republic, and 4 Pacific nations. That is not a massive opposition, 9 out of 193. So I think there is massive support out there. And if you look at Western Europe, Israel wanted to say, you know what, let's forget about Latin America, let's forget about Asia, let's forget about Africa, let's look at Europe. But even you look at Europe, Spain voted for, France voted for, Portugal, Austria, Ireland. This has massive support in Western Europe as well. So this is not a fringe sort of thing. And I don't think this came as a surprise. There were not sort of a lot of Johnny-come-lates. In fact, some of the European nations became actual sponsors
of the bill. But they're saying that it means nothing, though. By passing that, it really means nothing. It's a symbolic gesture. But there's no voting. They don't sit. So why is everybody, in one way, say, making such a big thing of nothing? Yeah. But then in another way, saying, why are they making such a big thing of it? Because it means nothing.
It's not just symbolic. It certainly is symbolic, but it's not only symbolic. With this new status that Palestine will have, they will also have access to apply to be admitted to various UN organizations. They will also have access to make complaints to the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice as a state. They will also have rights to exercise as a state. For instance, there's oil and gas reserves off the coast of Gaza. Now, as a state, they will have a right to actually say, look, part of the riches of that oil and gas deposit belong to us, that someone else just can't sort of take it away from us. So it's very significant, well beyond the symbolic importance.
Calvin, I want to bring you into this. From a legal point of view, where are we from a Canadian perspective? I mean, John Baird recalled and made a bit of a brouhaha about what's going on. Is his action in the same sense meaningless or really just symbolic?
Well, I think it's a bit of a political hotbed. I mean, everybody wants to try to be on the fence on stuff like this because it's like talking about, capital punishment or abortion. There's going to be dissidents and there's going to be a lot of, not a lot of meeting of minds. And there's some strong sentiments because of the history with, Israel and Palestine. So you'll have reasonable people disagreeing or agreeing to disagree. So I think that, there's not a lot of legal clout. I agree with Mr. Woodley in terms of what can be done. I mean, but I think it's a good initiative. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think that it's democracy in the Middle East, and I think that everybody's trying to recognize that it's a step forward. And I mean, there's a lot of people that are on the other side of the fence that say that, well, this is just a plight to get some political angle. But I mean, I think that it's been accepted that this is a welcome thing, and I think it was a vast majority that approved it, and the dissidents and the people that abstain. To me, that's a bit of a cop-out, right? That's I don't want to. This is too much a political hot potato. You make a decision or get off the fence.
As you can see, quite a discussion going on. We're discussing Palestine, the evolving situation. I'm Michael A. Charbon. You're watching Left and Right. We will be back with more right after this.